is Keys to the Shop, episode 149, conversation with Celina Velez, head roaster at Merit Coffee. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools that you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for this show, and I'm always happy to have you along today. If you have not yet subscribed to Keys to the Shop, I would encourage you to do so. That way you'll never miss an episode when it comes out. And if you have the opportunity to leave a rating or review for the show on iTunes, that would be fantastic as well. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Prima Coffee. Prima is a leading specialty coffee equipment supplier who curates the best equipment from around the world to fit perfectly with the needs of both their enthusiast and professional customers. So if you're looking to outfit your home bar or your commercial coffee bar, they've got you covered. Helping you succeed in making great coffee at home is what drives them. So if you're looking for the best equipment and expert assistance to go along with it, look no further than prima-coffee.com. Give them a call, email them, tell them Keys to the Shop sent you, and they will get you situated with the right gear to fit any situation you're in right now. So again, prima-coffee.com. Thanks, Prima, for your support of Keys to the Shop. This episode is also brought to you by the Pacific Barista series of plant-based performance beverages. These products are designed specifically for professional baristas and the standards for excellence that they demand. Whether we're talking about almond, soy, coconut, rice, or oat milk, its ability to take the heat from steaming, produce an unmatched, silky texture, and keep the flavor balance of your beverage focused on coffee, and it makes it a perfect choice for your cafe's menu. Pacific also is just a huge supporter of the barista community and specialty coffee globally, and these products are just a testimony to that fact. Made for baristas and in collaboration with baristas. So I would encourage you, go to pacificfoods.com, learn more about the Barista Series line of plant-based performance beverages, and see what they can do to help elevate the standards for non-dairy drinks in your cafe. Thank you very much, Pacific, for your support of Keys to the Shop. Okay, so today we get the pleasure of chatting with Celina Velez. She is the head roaster over at the famed Merit Coffee out of Austin, Texas. This conversation is just really great and insightful because Celina is almost ready to celebrate her 2-year anniversary of working in the specialty coffee world. So as we talk today, we're going to be discussing the fact that she is new to coffee and how that journey has been for her as someone coming from the outside, just as a consumer, an appreciator of coffee, and now somebody who is responsible for some of the best coffee around at Merit Coffee. It all kind of rests on her shoulders, and she has certainly risen to the challenge and has been doing amazing work at Merit. So this conversation just covers a lot of things from how she got into coffee, the learning curve for roasting. We talk about her palate development, and we talk about being new in the industry and her approach to learning and asking questions and taking on the challenges of somebody who enters into a space where there's a lot of pressure. And I think she has really solid insights to share with us as a newcomer into the specialty coffee world that we can all benefit from. So I hope you enjoy this conversation. Really thankful that I got to talk with Celina. So here now is my conversation with Celina Velez, the head roaster over at Merit Coffee. Hi, Celina. Welcome to Keys to the Shop.
Hi, thanks.
Yeah, it's really exciting to get to talk to you. And learn a little bit more about your roasting at Merit. And I've heard so many great things about Merit and also about you from Erica Voney. And of course, you know, Merit's reputation in the coffee you roast is preceding you. So it's exciting to sort of get a glimpse into your world. So thanks for agreeing to come on the show.
Well, thanks for having me. It's really exciting to really get to put all this out there and talk about what it's been like to be new to coffee. And I've come so far into it so quickly with a great company that's growing so quickly.
Yeah, talk a little bit more about that. I think, you know, you said you're new into coffee. How long has it been since you've been a coffee person, quote unquote?
Just under 2 years. 2 years will be in May next month, actually.
What was the catalyst for you deciding to start pursuing coffee?
So I wasn't really into coffee until I started working at Merit. I drank coffee almost daily, as most people do, but I preferred it dark roasted, pre-ground, robust, coffee brewed extra strong, which I now know is way over extracted. I worked at the brewery across the street from Merit, and so we would come over and the guys would hook us up with coffee for the day. And my first thoughts were, there's something wrong with this coffee. The milk's got to be bad. My cappuccino just tastes really funny. I didn't understand it, and since I didn't understand it, I was quick to assume I didn't like it. The next time I went back, and every time after that, I would just ask, Andrew and Joe, what's going on here? Why does it taste like this? And I got a whole new perspective on what coffee is capable of. It wasn't really until I tried iced coffee that I thought that this is really good. And so that was kind of my first impression of this is good coffee was as iced. Maybe because I didn't have predetermined idea of what iced coffee was supposed to taste like. So it was easier to accept the strangeness that it was.
So was it the curiosity that you had about beverages in general that came from working at the brewery that made you want to ask more questions about it? Sort of like that having that craft beverage culture around you in the brewery?
Yeah, actually, I never really thought twice about what went into the coffee that I drank until I had this coffee that was so different. And then as I asked more about it, it was just the whole world. Just this whole world of coffee that I didn't even know existed. And it's actually kind of funny how it all lines up with Merit. I was working at the brewery and then looking at doing something different, and I was talking to my boyfriend like, oh, I wonder, when the guys at Merit are going to need some help. I hear they're getting busier because we were all friends that met at the brewery across the street and stuff. And not 2 days later, Zach sends me a photo of this banner outside of Merit saying, oh, now hiring warehouse production assistant. And yeah, so I applied, and since I had the N of knowing Joe and Andrew, I think that helped them look past my lack of, I guess, experience in the field. And then all the guys across the street, like, oh yeah, she lifts heavy stuff, and they vouched for me.
So how was the first shift working at Merit? What was that like going from brewery to what position did you start in at the roastery?
A production assistant, so just like bagging coffee and packing orders and delivering to the shops and stuff nearby.
Mm-hmm. So the glamorous stuff.
Yeah, all the really, really exciting part of it. Well, I guess brewing beer is a fascinating thing, but really got me about the coffee was the climate-controlled warehouse and dry working conditions. But pretty quickly after working at Merit or starting to work there, I began to question like how roasting worked and why we did things the way that we did. It definitely helped that the roasting seemed a lot more inspiring and interesting than bagging coffee. I was really fascinated by the idea that roasting these beans was still such a mystery to people that have been doing it for nearly their whole lives, their whole adult lives. So I felt like this is something that if I decided to pursue it, I could spend my whole lifetime trying to perfect it, and like it would always be challenging and changing.
When you first started into roasting coffee, it was just taking over the reins from the previous roaster and then learning the ropes of dealing with the equipment and the protocols and all of that stuff. Was that what was the biggest challenge in sort of transitioning from that supporting role of bagging and delivery, which is super important, obviously, to being in charge of the reputation of the company, essentially?
The most challenging part of that was not having very clear guidelines on what to do. Roasting is kind of this in theory science, I guess, is how I see it. Everyone has a take on it and what works and what doesn't work, like just generally. And then there's just so many outlets from there on as far as where it can go. The thing I like most about it is that it's so gray, but it's also the most challenging part because it's just going to, the answer is always, well, it just takes time and doing it over and over to really learn how to manipulate these roast curves to bring out what you want to bring out of this coffee.
Yeah, and you're roasting, I know, a wide variety of coffee at Merit because there's a lot of different things for everybody. It's kind of an approachable selection of coffee. So Was that sort of a challenge to get familiar with all of those different profiles? And if so, was it sort of a welcome challenge?
Definitely a welcome challenge, and a challenge for sure. It's some of the coffees are really easy, like you roast them and I think I've got this. I know what I'm doing. And then I'll roast a different varietal, and it's, just as I think I know what I'm doing, it just does this crazy thing. And I think, oh, geez, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I really just think that beans just have a mind of their own. Cue some sci-fi music there. So I don't know. Just when you think you have it figured out, it just shows you that there's just more to it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's cool to be able to, I guess, have that variety. Like you were asking about the variety. It's nice to have the confidence that I can roast this coffee that's like for our milk-based espresso that typically all the beans that we use for react the same. And then the slow pour side of things are where it gets really wonky. And I'm getting more exposure to that lately because they're pushing me into actually making profiles for these coffees. And
yeah, you mean slow pour, like the pour over bars? And
yes.
Okay. So
yeah, they tend to be less predictable.
Yeah, definitely. And being involved in like a third wave shop, there's that. Well, I guess now that I'm saying it out loud, it's like third wave shops can be like all one profile, like all light, like super light, and not that they're all the exact same profile, but they might not let you flex your muscles in as a roaster. Not give you as much opportunity to develop yourself professionally if it's just like all super like one mono roast, but if you're saying that you do slightly more developed coffees and less developed coffees, it sounds like it just gives you an opportunity to grow in your knowledge of coffee, which it's especially important if you're just starting out.
Oh, definitely. I've tried just some very, very different coffees. Sometimes I'm like, what is this? And then most of the time I'm still adjusting to some of the flavors that can come through as far as like real acidic coffees and ones that taste, earthy, mushroomy, and perfumey. It's just so much variety, kind of mind blowing.
So for you as a roaster, you need to QC coffee and taste it. And as your taste develops and your skills develop, what kind of approach do you have now, being almost 2 years into it, that it is different than the way you approached coffee when you first started?
I don't try so hard as I did when I first started. When I first started, I felt like I had to taste all these things that everyone else was tasting, and I would just really try and I just put too much into it. There was too much pressure. Now I'm okay with giving 2 or 3 descriptors of what it is. And I realize that some days, I guess depending on what I ate or what I did the night before, I can taste more. And then some days it just tastes like coffee. And then that's all okay. Whereas before I was much more intimidated by it and much more difficult, I guess, at first.
Is that like the pressure of what you perceived as the community of coffee and what you expected yourself to be like super professional and knowledgeable right out of the gate, or that other people expected that of you?
I wouldn't say that it was expected of me. It was probably more myself. I really push to be good at whatever it is I take on. How did
you decide to like give up that voice that was telling you that, that imposter syndrome, essentially, like you are not as good as you need to be, but, like you said, this is the way people start. Like you don't know everything at first. Everybody starts there, but somehow you don't allow yourself to be comfortable in that position. So what did you do to sort of overcome that pressure?
I think a lot of it had to do with the support that I had from like our director of QC and our director of green coffee. I would cup a lot with Jamie, and she would just tell me like, it's okay if you don't taste this. And they were just very encouraging and helping me understand that like not to expect so much from myself, and that it really is something that takes years to build and get really good at.
In the process of developing yourself as a professional, inevitably, because you're so new into coffee, you still have clear memory and instinct rooted in being a consumer of coffee. Do you think that gives you an advantage as a roaster who is presenting coffees to people who have more years of experience on you?
I mean, I suppose it would be easy for people to lose touch with what, the average consumer expects out of a cup of coffee. And I'm pretty good at saying, oh, that would be a good wholesale offer because it's more approachable than this funky coffee over here on the other end of the table. But I mean, everyone at Merit is pretty, I don't know, I say that, but then I'm thinking that it really does help to have somebody to counter a well-experienced palate, what I should call it.
A well-experienced palate that, sometimes our well-experienced palates only give customers super bright, acidic Kenyans because we love them, and that's fine. But it's that counterbalance. I think that's really cool that you brought that up, because you offer a variety of coffee on the shelf. It would make sense to have a variety of different perspectives on the cupping table as well.
Yeah. Something that's really cool about Merit is that everyone really works together to have a coffee that's approachable to somebody who's walked in and never had specialty coffee. And then we still provide the exciting coffees for those well-seasoned connoisseurs out there. Mm-hmm. We really strive to show people that there's more to coffee than a harsh bitterness that demands to be masked with loads of cream and sugar. It really helps to have, our baristas are really proactive in communicating with us at the warehouse, what people are saying out there and what they love and how they experience our coffee in the shops.
Well, what do you do with that information? When a barista brings that to you, because they're on the front lines just making this coffee and tasting it themselves, and also having customers give them feedback. So you get hey, this Colombian is, something's changed about it. It's interesting, but it's not necessarily as good as it used to be. You've been handed that information like a baton. What do you do with it now as the roaster, or what does your team in you do with it?
So actually, we'll look at our roasting curve and what we're doing, and we'll try just tweaking it here and then in another spot and cut through that, and then we'll actually track, the certain batches that we're looking at, and then ask for feedback from those specifically to really try and keep it where it needs to be. It really helps to keep our roasting technique on the right path.
So you kind of go back to the people that were saying it tasted this way, and now what do you think about it now? What is the feedback? Did we fix the problem?
Yeah.
Nice. That's great.
Follow through really, really makes a difference.
How many shops does Merit have?
We have 10 cafes open now. And
2 that just opened in Dallas, right?
Right. Yep. Within the month, we just had 2 new ones in Dallas.
Wow. Things are picking up.
Yep. Robbie's looking for another one in Austin pretty soon, too.
Wow. So these cafes acting as sort of these testing grounds, not testing grounds like it's an experiment or anything. Obviously, these are highly quality controlled coffees, but it seems like the first line of defense is to get that good feedback from the cafes and then mitigate any problems that you would have on the wholesale end of things. It might lessen the amount of negative feedback or question feedback from wholesale customers on the quality of your coffee.
We actually, so every Friday, the warehouse staff, so myself, the director of QC, the green coffee director, and our lead trainer and our wholesale person, we actually all dedicate a couple hours every Friday to cupping the coffees, and we talk through them and how they're tasting to us and where we might make improvements if necessary. And after that, we all kind of summarized how the week looked for us, how it's going in the shop, how wholesale's liking our coffee or disliking it if they are. It's a really productive meeting that really helps everyone to stay in touch with all aspects of Merit. It's really easy to get stuck in the warehouse and not really see what's going on out in the world, like what's happening to the beans after they leave. So having that meeting really helps to understand, everything from what's going on the green beans to the cups that we serve to people the cup that you'll enjoy so much.
That's awesome. It makes it more likely that you'll grow as a professional in your position when you're not disconnected, where you could just spend so much time, like you said, behind the scenes producing the coffee and never getting any feedback. And sort of the assumption a lot of times might be, well, no news is good news, right? So nobody is complaining, so it's going fine. But that's rarely the case. Oftentimes, maybe it's just that people don't feel like they have a channel of communication back to the source, and the fact that you're kind of that system is in place to maintain that healthy connection is super important. So as you continue to roast coffee and develop your skills, what would you say right now you're the most proud of that you've accomplished since taking on this challenge and this new career?
Well, my proudest moment was probably, a few months into roasting after we had done our QC cupping, and Joe came to me and said, "Oh, well, we're gonna change the profile of Andino to this one that you made some tweaks on." And I just remember being like, "Oh wow, that's our main coffee," and I just made a few changes, and it's apparently it's better because we're gonna switch over to that profile.
Excellent.
Like such a simple thing could feel so good. The position in its entirety has really taught me patience. I've always been really quick to catch on to new things, and I used to get so frustrated, as I kind of mentioned earlier, about not knowing everything about coffee. So it's really being where I'm at has helped me realize that it's really just going to take time, so much time to get really good at this.
Do you feel like you could have gone down the path of just succumbing to the pressure to act like you knew everything when you first started in order to save face?
I definitely see how that would be an easy thing to do. I feel like I actually saw it and picked up on it pretty quickly, and really promised to myself that I would never pretend to know something I didn't. I would never, pretend to taste something that I didn't taste. And, I've kind of hit, I guess, a couple walls with that where it's, people will push to get you to taste these things. And it's really hard to say, no, I don't. So I could see how it'd be very easy to just kind of fall into that.
Yeah, it is. It's really a visceral feeling because you see oftentimes people get excited about what they're tasting, especially in a blind cupping when somebody is tasting, but they don't want to say anything, but you can tell they're excited. So they're already like influencing you to like they're trying not to be too excited, but they have a tell. And you want to join in with that excitement. Like, yes, I taste the blueberry, whatever that you taste. But, and I've been there too, after so many years in coffee where for whatever reason, I can't taste that particular thing that everybody's tasting. And I want to kind of be like, oh, yeah, I do.
Yeah.
And I know inside I feel dirty. I'm like lying to myself. I'm lying to them. You're right. That's a hard thing to do. So kudos to you for like embracing that. It feels like that's a challenge that a lot of people entering into a new area of expertise and skill building and career would be really challenged to embrace. It's like, what's at stake when you refuse to admit that you don't know? Like, what do you think could have happened that as a result of just not being patient and succumbing to that pressure?
Oh, I probably would have dug myself into a hole I couldn't get out of. I mean, people really look up to, I don't know. I've noticed through roasting and, hearing the whispers from the cafes, people really look up to roasters, and they really are fascinated by the coffee that we give to them. And I feel like had I pretended and gone down that hole, it would have ended up being a lot more stressful than just admitting that I don't know, because then they open that door for people to really look up to you for advice and what you're thinking.
That's a great point. I mean, there's a lot of superstars in our industry. There's a lot of putting people on pedestals and That's sort of natural for any industry, I suppose. There are people that you look up to, but you never know exactly what their standards are for themselves, and the problems that you could get from not admitting that you don't know. Like, who's to say that you would really be open to changing a profile based on the feedback that a barista gives you? Because you might have been lying to yourself for so long about what you do and don't know that you develop this ego that doesn't receive feedback.
Yeah, definitely. I like to think that having a less common approach to it may actually encourage other people to do the same, you know? Like, it's okay to admit that you don't know. And when nobody in the room does that, then it's less likely that somebody else will.
Yeah, and then we're all just lying to each other so that we can be coffee professionals,
right? Yeah, bunch of liars. How rude.
Yeah, we're just we're fooling ourselves and fooling our customers. It's not a good scene at all. So when you look at the landscape of specialty coffee, I mean, we were talking before we started recording about how so many people in specialty coffee now are just getting started. You know, they're a year or 2 years into it, and a lot of people who actually listen to this show are in that boat because they're looking for resources to be like, oh, well, here's a podcast. Let's listen to this and see if this helps me as I open my shop, or I take on this challenge of, you know, somebody wants me to be a manager. And I said, okay. And well, now what do I do? You know, or I want to be a roaster, and here I am roasting coffee now, and I feel underqualified for it.
So the feeling of all of that.
Yeah, right? So what do you say to people if you have them across the table from you? What kind of things would you advise them to kind of set their mind on, and steps to take in their personal journey of kind of embracing this new path in a healthy way from your experiences?
Really take pride in what you do and just work hard for it. I mean, any position I've been in, and that's kind of been my look on things. And so getting into coffee was no different. You know, I never saw myself as someone who would end up managing people. But when I was presented with the opportunity, all I really knew was what not to do. You know, I've had bosses that were the more sit and delegate type, and then some that were manipulative to get people to perform how they wanted them to. And when I was presented with this position, I made a commitment to myself to never be that kind of manager. Nothing's below my pay grade, as I've heard people say before. You know, I really believe that leading by example is the best style of management, and it really helps you to build a solid team and keep it together. Plus, being so involved makes it easier to like identify where things might be going wrong and to fix them right away. As far as coming into something that you know nothing about, if you just really put everything you've got into it, there are people that want to help you become something that you thought you could never be.
So tap into their help that's already around you and ask questions. I mean, don't wait for people to approach you, but sort of reach out to them and see what they can do for you and helping you develop yourself, right?
Yeah, definitely. Ask questions. I mean, I feel this kind of goes back to what we were just talking about, that people don't ask questions because they don't want to seem silly or like they don't know things. And I ask so many silly questions. I don't know, it's okay. Most of the time the answer is, you know, no one's ever asked that before. And then it just leads into really something that I thought was going to be a quick question always ends up being like a whole conversation of things, and asking questions. It's really important.
When you are talking about it's okay not to know things and to ask questions, and you've asked silly questions, those are things that are, once you start doing that, you kind of take charge of the result. Like, I'm going to be the one to initiate this process of asking questions. And so you get over that hill, it feels like, okay, whatever happens next is on my terms. Sometimes, though, there are things that happen that you didn't expect. You know, you accidentally open the gate on the roaster and green coffee gets mixed in with a roasted coffee. I hope that hasn't happened to you yet, but I've known so many roasters that they've had to spend hours picking out green from roasted.
I can't imagine.
It's not a good scene. The dejected look on the, like, who died? Oh my gosh. But there's mistakes. That is what I'm saying, is like there's mistakes that happen in the process of developing yourself that you can't necessarily predict, but you have to react a particular way in order for it to turn into something good. Like, speak to us about navigating mistakes as you take on these new challenges.
I mean, it's not the end of the world. What I've learned from roasting coffee is that, and I don't know, it's like I'll roast a coffee and I think that I just bombed it. It's awful, but we'll brew it as iced coffee and it's okay. It's really a lot more forgiving than you think. And I mean, I've talked to people about the small mistakes that I've made, and I had a guy once tell me, "Oh, I ordered an entire shipping container of the wrong coffee," and it really puts in the perspective that something that seems so big to you is actually not that big. It could be so much worse, I guess, with most things. But it's easy to get stuck in the small place that you're in, and so everything, like the smallest thing that happens, seems so much bigger than it really is.
That's so true. I'm thinking back to times where I've spilled espresso onto the floor when I was, first starting as a barista, and you just watched the video about how the coffee goes from the farm and this chain of value, and you got all these faces and hands and along the chain, and then you spill your shot. Oh my gosh, like I'm gonna get fired.
How dare you?
Yeah, I've desecrated this coffee and my jeans, and it's just awful. But now I spill a shot, and it's not like, oh, coffee's coffee, I don't care about anybody. It's more like, no, mistakes happen, and we're gonna move on from there. But you're right, to you in the moment it seems like the end of the world, but I love that you are able to talk to other people about their mistakes, and they were willing to talk about that with you, because it shows that right now, even as we're talking on this call, there are people making mistakes in roasteries. They're going to have to deal with that, and it's okay. You're not alone.
It's okay to recognize it and see it, and then just move on. If you hold on to it, you're just going to make another mistake.
You beat yourself up for it.
Too much pressure.
Yeah, it just definitely, it clouds the mind, just like in competition.
Mm-hmm.
You get nervous, you get the handshakes, and so I love your perspective on growing as a professional. It's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay not to know everything, and learn as you go. It's so pragmatic and so practical. It's exciting because, again, the coffee that you're producing is amazing coffee, and it's just going to get more amazing because any progress that you make is going to be like on the back of a really honest and straightforward path of professional development. So I'm really excited for what your career holds in the future and what you've already accomplished.
I'm so lucky to have kind of just fallen into this where I'm at, and I have a great opportunity to learn this and have it be something that I've built and kept great, and just it feels really good. Robbie and Nisha have done a really great job about bringing out the potential that I didn't even know that I had. Another thing I find important is that if you ever find yourself in a place that doubts your capabilities, because you're a woman or really for any other reason, you should move on. There's a place out there that'll recognize you for your hard work and dedication, and they'll see you as an asset rather than frail or incompetent. The statement I've really heard most, being both in brewing beer and roasting coffee, is we get these delivery guys and they say, well, how are you going to move those bags around? Or the more insulting version of, where are all the guys at? And so there's fewer things more satisfying than the look on those burly men's faces when I move these 150-pound bags with like finesse they can only dream of having.
Nice. Get them.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a good feeling to just show them that you can do it. It doesn't matter what size you are, you know?
Yeah, that's absolutely. If people are doubting you for something as petty as that, it's surely a sign that they're not going to be the type of person to support you as you grow as a professional anyway.
Yeah, there's someone out there that will, so don't give all you've got to somebody that doesn't recognize or appreciate it.
I love it. Yeah, excellent. Well put. So here's my last question for you. How can owners and operators of coffee bars and roasteries facilitate the kind of things that you're experiencing now at Merit to help their people develop the way that you are?
You know, I don't think that I could stress enough how important it is as, you know, a leader, an owner, to recognize hard work and dedication that people have coming into this knowing nothing about coffee. You know, I just showed Robbie, Nisha, and Andrew, who, you know, ran the warehouse before I did, that I was willing to work hard and to never stop asking questions. And, you know, in turn, they saw that and they gave me this opportunity to run production at Merit. And they still continue to challenge me and give me freedom to do it. And the trust they trust that I'll just do my best to keep it running smoothly. And just them recognizing that has really helped me build the confidence that I need to do it. Just always being available and offering encouragement when it's needed. It feels really good to feel like the people that are in charge of you, you know, can see what you're capable of and believe in you.
I love that.
It's gotta be so genuine though.
Yeah. This has really been great to hear from you and to learn from your experiences. It's such a real encouraging perspective for those of us, even for those of us who have been in it for a long time, who can shed a little bit of the pressure that we put on ourselves, you know, as a result of listening to your, you know, experience of developing as a professional. Even, you know, I've been in coffee 20 years now, and I know that just I'm encouraged to take another look at what I expect of myself this year and what things have I built up in my mind about where I'm at as a coffee person. It's really refreshing to kind of get an inside glimpse into that learning phase. And so I really thank you for taking the time to kind of lay it out for us in this conversation. So how can we stay up to date with what's going on with all this activity and growth at Merit?
The infamous Instagram. Merit's super proactive about posting what's happening, where we're opening. Plus you get to see beautiful pictures of all the shops. That's one of my favorite things about Merit is how there's just so much care that goes into the design of each shop. They're just great.
Awesome. Well, we'll be sure to follow Merit on Instagram. And thank you again, Celina. This was great. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. And you've certainly made our day wonderful just with your insights and taking the time to talk with us. Again, it's been super encouraging. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It was a pleasure.
Well, I really hope today that you are encouraged and that you have found some inspiration in Celina's words today and in her example, especially if you're just starting out in the specialty coffee industry. There is a lot of pressure that you can put on yourself when you're just entering into a new industry or a new responsibility, and putting one foot in front of the other, not being afraid to ask questions, to learn, to admit you don't know everything, and just to work hard, stay curious, and really keep it simple is a very good strategy for honest and sustainable growth. That last part being very important, sustainable growth. You can sustain this kind of pace over the long haul of your career. And I know that Celina has a great career ahead of her with the kinds of convictions and values that she has, as illustrated in this talk, as her foundation. So my thanks to Celina for taking the time to share her heart and her experiences in coffee thus far. We really appreciate you and can't wait to see where your career takes you. You can find out more about Merit Coffee by going to meritcoffee.com. That's MERIT coffee.com. You can also find them on Instagram under the same handle at Merit Coffee. And if you want to reach out to me for any reason, got feedback or questions, comments about the show, or you were interested in working with Keys to the Shop Consulting to help you in your operations take it to the next level, then just email me, chris@keystotheshop.com. I always love hearing from listeners to the show, and I appreciate every single one of you. And that's it for today's show. Thank you again for joining me. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.